I want to get first reactions in from Sushant Sareen. He's one of India's most well-regarded and well-known strategic affairs analysts and observers of what's been happening and the spillover effect of the Israel-Gaza conflict. He's also senior fellow with the Observer Research Foundation. Sushant, welcome. Thank you for your time. Gaurav is also with us. Sushant, to you first. I just wanted to quote what you said immediately after Suella Braverman was sacked. This is a post you put up on Twitter where you said, has Rishi Sunak just lost the next election? More importantly, by surrendering to the Islamist radicals, he's made them taste blood. Englistan is now fast becoming a reality in which a radical minority will exercise veto over pusillanimous majority. Explain that. That doesn't really need explaining, but Englistan is the word you've used. Rishi Sunak bowing to Islamist radicals. Mr. Sareen.
Yeah, so Shiv, about London, it's very often said that it's not London, it's Londonistan. So I just use that analogy.
Yes.
But what is very clear is the kind of approach that the Metropolitan Police in the UK seems to have used. At least that is what is visible to the naked eye. When you look at all the coverage coming in, there is very open, blatant anti-Semitism. There is violence taking place. There are these mobs who are attacking people. They are hurling slurs at Jews and other people. And yet, when you look at the attitude of the Metropolitan Police, it is that, okay, just let it be. We don't have the numbers. We can't take on these mobs. So we would rather give in. And when there is a pushback from somebody else, and I'm not talking about the right-wing, white racist mobs. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about ordinary people, veterans and others, or for that matter, people of Jewish descent who hold up an Israeli flag or who push back against this whole river to the sea slogan, which is happening in many parts of the Western world. When they put up those posters, we've seen the police, push them away and say that,
yes,
look, you are being troublemakers. So we've seen some of that. And I think that is what Suella Braverman was to some extent reacting to. There could have been also an element of, their internal politics.
Yes.
And there was also this factor that there was a very strong lobby within the Conservative Party, which was pushing for her sacking. But the point is, that there does seem to be a kind of polarization taking place in not just the UK, but also in other parts of the Western world on this particular issue.
Yes.
And there is only a 7% population of Muslims in the UK. And I'm not sure if all Muslims are on one side. But even if you assume that all of them are, a unified bloc, there is a 93% other population which does not necessarily subscribe, or at least a vast majority of them does not necessarily subscribe to the slogans that we are seeing on the streets. So Are you now giving this mob, which seems to be well organized, which seems to be, have nothing else to do so they can come out in numbers? We've seen that in the protests against India, haven't we? That suddenly you will see these huge mobs of Pakistani descent people who come out and will be agitating in front of the Indian High Commission and using violent and other abusive language against them. So when you bring these people out on the streets, then you start exercising a kind of a veto on the streets, and most other people who just want to get by their life say, okay, fine, just these are a bunch of hotheads, just give in to them. But the moment you give in to them, what you do is that you feed this monster. And then how do you rein them in later on? So that seems to be happening right now.
And that's clearly happening. Even a cursory glance, Gaurav, at social media shows that there are so many supporters of the Hamas who are claiming first blood. They're seeing this as a victory. They're saying, it is our resistance and our demonstrations and protests in London and, European capitals that have resulted in this. They are actually seeing this as a victory for, Hamas. And that is dangerous. As Sushant said, you give in once, they smell blood.
Shiva, spark neglected burns the house. And England clearly is ignoring a fire in their courtyard. It's not even a fire in their backyard anymore. When 300,000 people take to the streets, and 300,000 people, while they may talk about Palestine, but the sloganeering, the clothes that some of them are wearing, their headbands that they have are all to do with Hamas, and they chant slogans from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and death to Jews, or words to that effect. It just goes on to indicate that England is living in very, very difficult times. This is something that Suella Braverman also wrote about in her article, if I may. She said things to the effect: terrorists have been valorized, Israel has been demonized as Nazis, and Jews have been threatened with mass massacre, with further massacre. And this just goes on to show that while Jews have been massacred on the 7th of October, there are those who are saying they will do this once again given an opportunity, and then there are people who are standing up in support of that mindset, even if not those individuals. This is what Suella Braverman was pointing out, that the British police are lenient towards these pro-Palestinian hate marches, that she called them, vis-a-vis the pro-Israel supporters. This is something that cost her her job.
Very interesting. You know, Sushant, when I was reporting in Israel, I was there for a couple of weeks, reporting on various aspects of what was going on. The belief in Israel for, perhaps the first time in a very long time, is that they've lost control of the narrative. They've lost control of the international opinion over what's happening between Israel and Gaza. The sacking of Suella Braverman would kind of validate that suspicion and that fear in Israel as well, that it is an entirely different sort of ecosystem that's calling the shots.
I wouldn't entirely agree with that, Shiv. What I would say is that the narrative is very sharply divided. There are a whole lot of people who say that, look, this is not Israel's fault alone. This was forced upon Israel, and what Israel is doing is the right thing to do because this is an existential threat to them, and they need to clean this up, right? So there are a range of people who are saying that. And yet there is this woke, leftist, so-called pseudo-liberal or liberal fascists, if you want to call them, crowd, which is there in the BBC, which is there in Sky News, which is there in Channel 4, which is all over the place, right? Which is there in academia in the Western world, especially in the UK. Which is taking a completely different line, and then there is the mobs on the street. Now, please remember, Shiv, and I don't want to, conflate, but let me give you an example. When we see the mobs attacking people, the Indian High Commission or the Hindus in the UK, just look at the attitude. These are Muslim mobs in the UK, most of them Pakistanis, who are attacking Hindus and blaming the Hindus for attacking them. We see something similar happening with the Jews. Let me give you another example. There is this Sikh gentleman, a restaurateur, by the name of Harnam Kapoor, right? He has been harassed. His family has been harassed with the worst kind of violence threatened against them, including threats of rape against his wife and daughter, all kinds of things. Have you seen the Metropolitan Police act against any of those guys? And yet, and we know who those guys are. We know that those guys are Khalistanis who are aligned with many of the radical Islamist Muslim mobs in the UK and with the Pakistanis. And who is the mayor of UK? Of London, sorry?
Yes.
And who does the police come under in operational terms? So, you start adding these things together. Maybe these are just straws in the wind, but this is the impression which a lot of us are getting sitting out here, that London or the UK is no longer a safe place. This was a place where people could go, take refuge. People, were safe. Violence of any kind was never condoned, but that is happening now, isn't it?
Selective application
violence is entirely condoned, and
selective application of the law. England turning into an Englistan, and certain sections seeing this as a foot in the door, that the law will not act against them, means that the next time, perhaps things will get even worse. Sushant, Sareen, thank you very much for your time and for that analysis. I saw your tweet and I wanted your words on this breaking story that we've gotten here.